All right, we're up to section 6. After this section, we'll be halfway through the book. Protector. My family, which humans call a troop, was just like any other gorilla family. There were 10 of us: my father, the silverback, my mother, and 3 other adult females, a juvenile male called a blackback, and 2 other young gorillas. Tag and I were the babies of the group. We squabbled now and then, as families will, but my father knew how to keep us in line with a simple scowl. And for the most part, we were happy to do what we were meant to do, to feed and forage and nap and play. My father was a master at leading us to the ripest fruit for our morning feast and the finest branches for our night nests. He was everything a silverback is meant to be: a guide, a teacher, a protector. And nobody could chest beat like my father. A perfect life. Gorilla babies and elephant babies and human babies are not so different, except that a gorilla gets to spend the day riding on his mother's back, like a cowboy on a horse. It's a pretty great system from the baby's point of view. Slowly, carefully, a young gorilla begins to venture farther and farther away from the safety of his mother's arms. He learns the skills he will need as an adult: how to make a nest of branches, weave them tightly or they will fall apart in the middle of the night; how to beat your chest, cup your palms to amplify the sound; how to go vining from tree to tree, don't let go; how to be kind, be strong, be loyal. Growing up gorilla is just like any other kind of growing up. You make mistakes, you play, you learn, you do it all over again. It was, for a while, a perfect life. One day, a still day when the hot air hummed, the humans came. And notice the chapter was called The End. Vine. After they captured my sister and me, they put us in a cramped, dark crate that smelled of urine and fear. Somehow I knew that in order to live, I had to let my old life die. But my sister could not let go of our home. It held her like a vine, stretching across the miles, comforting, strangling. We were still in our crate when she looked at me without seeing, and I knew that the vine had finally snapped. The temporary human. It was Mac who pried open the crate, Mac who bought me, and Mac who raised me like a human baby. I wore diapers, I drank from a bottle, I slept in human beds, sat in human chairs, listened while human words swarmed around me like angry bees. Mac had a wife back then. Helen was quick to laugh, but quick to anger too, especially when I broke something, which was often. Here is what I broke while I lived with Mac and Helen: 1 crib, 46 glasses, 7 lamps, 1 couch, 3 shower curtains, 3 shower curtain rods, 1 blender, 1 TV, 1 radio, 3 toes, my own. I broke the blender when I squeezed 3 tubes of toothpaste and a bottle of glue into it. I broke my toes attempting to swing from a lamp fixture on the ceiling. I broke 46 glasses. Well, it turns out there are many ways to break a glass. Every weekend, Mac and Helen took me in their convertible to a fast food restaurant where they ordered me French fries and a strawberry shake. Mac loved to see the expression on the cashier's face when he drove up and said, "Could I have some extra ketchup for my kid?" I went to baseball games, to the grocery store, to a movie theater, even to the circus. They didn't have a gorilla. I rode a little motorbike and blew out candles on a birthday cake. My life as a human was a glamorous one, although my parents, traditional sorts, would not have approved. Hunger. In my new life as a human, I was well tended. I ate leaves with Thousand Island dressing and caramel apples and popcorn with butter. My belly ballooned. But hunger, like food, comes in many shapes and colors. At night, lying alone in my poo pajamas, I felt hungry for the skilled touch of a grooming friend, for the cheerful grunts of a play fight, for the easy safety of my nearby troop foraging through shadows. Remember what happened to Tag, I told myself. Don't think about the jungle. Still, sometimes I lay awake wishing for the warmth of another just like me, asleep in a night nest of tender prayer plant leaves. I liked having sips of soda poured into my mouth like a bubbling waterfall. But every now and then I longed to search for a tender stalk of arrowroot, to feel the tease of a mango, just out of reach. Still life. One day Helen came home with something large and flat wrapped in brown paper. "Look what I bought today," she said excitedly as she tore off the paper, "a painting to go over the living room couch." "Fruit in a bowl?" Max said with a shrug. "Big deal." "This is fine art. It's called a still life," Helen explained, "and I think it's lovely." I dashed over to examine the painting, marveling at the colors and shapes. "See," said Max's wife, "Ivan likes it." "Ivan likes to roll up poop and throw it at squirrels," Max said. I couldn't take my eyes off the apples and bananas and grapes in the picture. They looked so real, so inviting, so edible. I reached out to touch a grape, and Helen slapped my hand. "Bad boy, Ivan, don't touch." She jerked her thumb at Mac. "Honey, go get a hammer and nail, would you?" While Mac and Helen were busy in the living room, I wandered into the kitchen. A cake covered in thick chocolate frosting sat on the counter. I like cake, love it in fact, but it wasn't eating I was thinking about. It was painting. The frosting peaked and dipped like waves on a tiny pond. It looked rich and gooey, dark and smooth. It looked like mud. I scooped up a handful of frosting. I scooped up another. I headed to the refrigerator door. It was perfect, an empty white waiting canvas. The frosting wasn't as easy to work with as jungle mud. It was stickier and, of course, more tempting to eat. But I kept at it. I scraped off every last bit of that frosting. I may have eaten a little cake, too. I don't remember what I was trying to paint. A banana, most likely. I suppose I knew I was going to get in trouble. But at that moment, I just didn't care. I wanted to make something, anything, the way I used to. I wanted to be an artist again. Punishment. I soon learned that humans can screech even louder than monkeys. After that, I was never allowed in the kitchen. Babies. Back in those days, the Big Top Mall was smaller. It had a pony ride, a wooden train that bustled around the parking lot, a few bedraggled parrots, and a surly spider monkey. But when Mac bought me, a baby gorilla dressed in a crisp tuxedo, to the mall, everything changed. People came from far and wide to have their pictures taken with me. They brought me blocks and a toy guitar. They held me in their laps. Once I even held a baby in mine. She was small and slippery. Bubbles flowed from her lips. She squeezed my fingers. Her rear was puffy with padding. Her legs bowed like bent twigs. I made a face. She made a face. I grunted. She grunted. I was so afraid she would fall that I squeezed her tightly, and her mother yanked her away. I wonder if my mother ever worried about dropping us. We always held on, but that's easier to do when your mother is furry. Human babies are an ugly lot, but their eyes are like our babies' eyes. Too big for their faces and for the world. Beds. One day, after many weeks of loud talking, Helen packed a bag and slammed the front door and never came back. I don't know why. I never know the why of humans. That night I slept with Mac in his bed. My old nests were woven of leaves and sticks and shaped like his bathtub, cool green cocoons. Mac's bed, like mine, was flat, hot, without sticks or stars. Still, he made a sleeping sound like the rumble my father used to make when all was well, a sound from deep inside his belly. My place. Mac grew sullen. I grew bigger. I became what I was meant to be, too large for chairs, too strong for hugs, too big for human life. I tried to stay calm, to move with dignity. I did my best to eat daintily, but human ways are hard to learn, especially when you're not a human. When I saw my new domain, I was thrilled, and who wouldn't have been? It had no furniture to break, no glasses to smash, no toilets to drop Mac's keys into. It even had a tire swing. I was relieved to have my own place. Somehow, I didn't realize I'd be here quite so long. Now I drink Pepsi, eat old apples, watch reruns on TV. But many days, I forget what I'm supposed to be. Am I a human? Am I a gorilla? Humans have so many words, more than they truly need. Still, they have no name for what I am. "9,876 days. Ruby is finally asleep. I watch her chest rise and fall. Bob, too, is snoring. But my mind is still racing. For perhaps the first time ever, I've been remembering. It's an odd story to remember, I have to admit. My story has a strange shape, a stunted beginning, an endless middle. I count all the days I've lived with humans. Gorillas count as well as anyone, although it's not a particularly useful skill to have in the wild. I've forgotten so many things, and yet I always know precisely how many days I've been in my domain. I take one of the magic markers Julia gave me. I make an X, a small one, on my painted jungle wall. I make more X's and more. I make an X for every day of my life with humans. My marks look like this. The rest of the night I mark the days, and when I am done, my wall looks like this. And so on, until there are 9,876 X's marching across my wall like a parade of ugly insects. A visit. It's almost morning when I hear steps. It's Mac. He has a sharp smell. He weaves as he walks. He stands next to my domain. His eyes are red. He is staring out the window at the empty parking lot. "Ivan, my man," he mumbles. "Ivan." He presses his forehead against the glass. "We've been through a lot, you and me." A new beginning. We don't see Mac for 2 days. When he returns, he doesn't talk about Stella. Mac is anxious to teach Ruby some tricks. He says the billboard is bringing in more visitors. He says it's time for a new beginning. All afternoon and into the evening, Mac works with Ruby. Ruby's feet are looped with rope so that she cannot run. A heavy chain hangs off her neck. Mac shows her Stella's ball, her pedestal, her stool. He introduces her to Snickers. When Ruby obeys Max, he gives her a cube of sugar or a bit of dried apple. When she doesn't, he yells and kicks at the sawdust. When George and Julia arrive, Mac is training Ruby. Julia sits on a bench and watches them. She draws a little, but mostly she keeps her eyes on Ruby. Bob watches too. He's hiding in the corner of my domain under Not Tag. It's raining outside, and Bob does not like damp feet. Ruby trudges behind Mac, her head drooping. Endlessly they circle the ring. Sometimes Mac slaps her flank with his hand. Suddenly Ruby jerks to a stop. Mac pulls the chain hard, but Ruby refuses to move. "Come on, Ruby," Mac is almost pleading. "What is your problem?" "She's exhausted," I say to myself. "That's the problem." Mac groans. "Idiot elephant." "Idiot human," Bob mutters. "Walk, Ruby," I say, although I know she's too far away. She's too far away to hear me. Do what he says. "Walk," Mac commands, "now." Ruby doesn't walk. She plops her rump on the sawdust floor. "I think maybe she's tired," Julia says. Mac wipes his forehead with the back of his arm. "Yeah, I know, we're all tired." He pushes Ruby with the heel of his boot. She ignores him. George looks over from the food court where he is wiping off tables. "Mac," he yells, "maybe you should call it a day. I'll close up." Mac yanks on Ruby's chain. She's as anchored as a tree trunk. He pulls harder and falls to his knees. "That does it," Mac says. He brushes sawdust off his jeans. "I am through playing around." Mac stomps off to his office. When he returns, he's carrying a long stick. The gleaming hook on its end is almost beautiful, like a sliver of moon. It's a claw stick. Mac pokes Ruby with a sharp point, not hard, just a touch. I can tell he wants her to see how much it can hurt. I growl low in my throat. Ruby doesn't move. She is a gray, unmoving boulder. She closes her eyes, and for a moment I wonder if she might have fallen asleep. "I'm warning you," Mac says. He breathes out. He stares at the ceiling. Ruby makes a huffing sound. "Fine," Mac says. "You want to play that way?" He draws back the claw stick. "No!" Julia cries. "I'm not going to hurt her," Mac says. "I just want to get her attention." Bob snarls. Mac swings. The hook slices the air just a few inches above Ruby's head. "See why you don't want to mess with me?" Mac says. He draws back the claw stick again. "Now move!" Ruby jerks her head, flinging her trunk toward Mac. She makes a sound that sends the sawdust scattering. It makes my glass shiver. It is the most beautiful mad I have ever heard. Ruby's trunk slaps into Mac. I don't see exactly where she strikes him, somewhere below his stomach, I think, and I know he must be uncomfortable because Mac drops the claw stick and falls down on the ground and curls into a ball and howls like a baby. "Direct hit," Bob says.